It's Halloween as we record this, and we know it's going to air after Halloween. We have friends who do a haunted garage. They have a theme every year, and they set up their garage and their driveway, and they even have actors that have come into it with the theme. I know one of the first years I remember, it was like this haunted bride scene, and the bride had died, and there were statues on their front yard.
And he had up in the above the garage, there's a window, and he had a
projected
image
of
an
like
image, a movie, a live, like a video image or whatever
of like a
of her.
ghost bride,
Yeah.
and Stan's very technical, and he does all these elaborate.
Oh my gosh, technical stuff. Like he had the bookcase. Remember, he had put in a wheel behind these wheels behind it, and it would push a book out and bring it back. Push a book out and it would just go through. So yeah.
And so you never know what's going to happen, right? If you go through a haunted house, or in that unexpected, and that you're afraid because you're not sure what's going to jump out at you. I was not a big haunted house person.
No, I wasn't either
as a kid. And although I mean, I've enjoyed going to theirs because it's it's amazing though. You go through it's just a regular 2-car garage, but you feel like you are.
He has like,
you kind of weave in and out, and it feels like you're in a much larger area than a garage. So yeah, they had stopped doing it because of COVID, and then they started it up again, I guess last year. And we
didn't make it last year, I don't think. Anyway.
so one year our son is friends with their son, and they got actors to participate one year. And so I knew that he was going to be there as an actor, and they're going to put makeup and costume. I'm not sure if it was the year that he was
in the coffin.
He was in a coffin. Yeah, that was a creepy image.
Open up and
surprise people. So I knew he was there. He was having fun. I was home. I didn't go because of young kids that would be too much for. And Lexi was pretty little. And like after the event, my friend Jody sends me a picture of Harrison, and she tells me the story of how someone came through and got so startled by him that they punched him, and he looked like he had been punched. And I'm like worried about, oh my gosh, he got hit, and concerned about him. And then it wasn't that much longer that she told me, that was just the makeup on his face, that he really
didn't. Probably his idea too, I would imagine.
Oh,
knowing Harrison.
It's hard to know, the two of them working together on it. So it's, I thought something had happened to him, and it was just the makeup that made it. I mean, they did the makeup upright, and it was kind of amazing. But that kind of unexpected, not sure what's going to happen, thinking about that as Halloween is just passed for you all watching or listening to this, and that kind of fear, that tenseness that you get. Oh my gosh, not knowing. So this is Gina.
And this is Don. Go ahead.
We could say it in unison.
With Focused Healthy Family. And this is podcast number 83. And today we're talking about unknown, and the fear of unknown. But before we do that, let's take just a moment for our sponsor.
Our sponsor is Q Sciences. I've been a representative for Q Sciences for over a year. I found this company through a friend and did some research and reading about these products. And I really liked what I found when I learned about them. The research and time that they've put into the quality of these products to be better absorbed into the body. Things like the vitamin D spray. Our youngest was on a capsule vitamin D, and yet vitamin D levels remained the same with follow-up checkups. And with the spray, it increased.
Pretty strong.
Almost double.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking her levels were maybe 20. And I want to say they went up to 47 or something around that range. And the sleep spray is another great one. It's got melatonin, 5-HTP, and I believe another herbal supplement in there. And because it's a spray, you spray it on your tongue, it gets absorbed more quickly into your body to be more effective, to help you in the moment. We're using the B12 spray. We've used the vitamin C spray. They have a Q Max product, which is a multivitamin.
And they also have the CBD, different, a variety of different,
It's full spectrum
full
hemp
spectrum, yes.
oils. They even have a THC free version. It comes in different flavors. There is a mushroom
oh yeah,
armor. It's called Q Armor. It's a powder, and I get the chai flavor. Put it in my chai tea for a double chai drink.
so instead of, as they say, flushing your supplements down, well, the toilet or the drain, you want to get something like this that's fully absorbed. It's like flushing money down the toilet too, if you're not using a supplement that absorbs well and does well for your body. So that's what Q Science is really about. It's a good, well absorbed, high nutrient product.
They have multiple products. They have child specific products. They now also have some facial cream products. I've been using a night cream to minimize the effects of sunlight and stress and aging on my skin. And they have a hemp lotion. That's also a wonderful product that we've tried. So check us out, learn more. You can find the link at our website,
www.focusedhealthyfamily.com. You can also go to focusedhealthyfamily.com/Q Sciences, the letter Q and Sciences.
with an S at the end.
With the S at the end, yes.
Here we are talking about the fear of the unknown. And our story was about Halloween and the unexpected. And I'm just picturing, I never really did a lot of haunted houses, but I used to watch the Ellen show, and they always did a haunted thing every year. And they showed the video of she would send her crewmates in.
Yeah, I felt sorry for people because
but that's that, thinking about that tenseness that you feel, not knowing what's going to happen. So that's a very intensified version of it, right? And we know it's fake, even though we're still afraid of what's going to happen. Yet in our life, there's a lot of us can get paralyzed by the fear of the unknown, and we can stay stuck in our patterns and keeps us from moving forward because, we don't know what's going to happen.
And we kind of want to know, but don't want to know at the same time. It's kind of it interests me because I was listening to Zen Parenting and their podcast, and one part of, they were going through a series, I can't remember now what it was, but it was part of what Jack Canfield teaches. And one part of it, they talked about the unknown, and it just got me thinking about that. For me, the unknown, as I thought about it, it got deeper in the idea that the unknown is very important to us because it allows us or queries us to question things and to doubt things. And I think that's when we begin to change, is when we doubt or we question things. And so I think it's important for us to have the unknown. And besides the fact of we can't really know
when our cats are going to scamper through the house and attack each other.
Yeah.
If you can hear that in our podcast.
I think they kind of do that. I think when we get on something like this.
They've had the zoomies the past couple of days.
Yeah, running around, pouncing on each other.
At 6 a.m.
So it's, to me, it's an important factor to have the unknown. Like I said, well, you wouldn't really want to know the future necessarily.
Yeah, you want to know everything that's going to happen in your life in the future.
That's
sort of a theme that's been in different movies and things.
Well, for the fact that, like Esther Hicks says,
or Abraham Hicks,
yes, talks about, would you want all the food you're ever going to eat now? Well, no, of course, it's too overwhelming, and I think it would be overwhelming to know your future, and it probably wouldn't be good, actually.
It helps us stretch and grow. And Don researched this topic, and so I have a little bit of fear of the unknown, of what what he's delved into, but I'm like, okay, let's run with it.
Well, it also because I get a lot of it in my practice, my EFT tapping practice. I get a lot of people that's something that's been blocking them, that's stopping them from moving forward, either in the program, the doctor program that I'm involved in, or just in life itself.
And what about just the unknown of what tapping is like when they come to you
Oh,
apprehensively?
yeah,
Like they told me
yeah.
I should make an appointment
Gotta
with you,
see Don,
but
you
I don't
know.
know what I'm doing.
Yeah, and many times that's very easily reversed. But so I looked it up, and I just did a little search on it, and I found this website. It's called the Minimalism Made Simple, and they talk about the fear of the unknown and what causes it, or what's behind it. And uh, part of it is, the people are not sure of what's to come, and they get afraid of what might come.
Mhm.
And they talked about one of the biggest fears is the fear of something coming along, like a disease, or that's going to take away all their money.
Hmm.
So it goes, this, I think there's one of the big fears in life is about around money and the lack of and not enough
Like
of.
cancer and you can't afford it all. I'm just picturing a little disease and they eat away at your money, little virus
Yeah.
that finds your
You open up
coins,
and it's just,
finds your credit cards, and it gobbles them up. So,
yeah, that was what they talked about. Yeah,
okay.
that was exactly.
Sticking with the
No,
Halloween theme here today.
yes, yes.
And you wore the right color.
Oh, I didn't.
Mhm.
Pumpkin orange or pumpkin, whatever you call this
Sort of a
color.
salmon.
Yeah,
It's orangey.
fish out of water.
That's how we feel right now in our new home.
But yeah, with the fear of what could come that could dismantle their life or just derail their life.
Mhm.
And they talk about a lot of times childhood traumas can cause this. You know, they talk about a genetic disposition to certain phobias.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Fear of heights.
coming meaning that it came through parents or through
Well, it could
ancestry
be
or
cultural, or it could be literally in your genes. That my mother has a fear of heights, and I have a fear of heights, and my brother, I think, has a fear of heights.
well, I have claustrophobia, so that's the fear of enclosed places.
And it can come about from situations we've experienced, and I'm sure, being influenced by my mother with that fear of heights, and yet my sister didn't really develop that. So yeah, there can be a cultural component of our experiences, but there can also be, I'm sure, an aspect that could be genetic as far as it's in our genes. Are you wearing jeans today? I'm not.
Yeah, the black gene. We digressed a little. So yeah, it could, well, and you think about it, fear of the mother while the baby is in womb.
Fear of the mother. Oh, I thought
The
you were
fears,
afraid of
no,
mothers.
the fears of the
Oh
mother
no, it's a mother.
can be passed along by
The mother's fears. Well, I was pregnant when 9/11 happened. Anyone who's got a 21-year-old kid, someone born in late 2001, or she was born in early 2002, and how a traumatic event impacting while you're pregnant. I didn't have a big fear response to that event that I was consciously aware of. Well, yeah, sure, there was fear to some degree. We live in
didn't know what was going to,
Charlotte's a huge
what more was going to happen.
A banking city, and I was doing home care, and I was in a different county south of Charlotte at the time when I went into someone's home and saw that happen. And I remember thinking, I'm glad I'm not near downtown today, because who knows where they're going to hit next.
Yeah,
with Charlotte
there was a big
banking center. It was a big concern.
Unknown of how much more that was going to happen, whether we were going to be able to stop it before it did, which they did do some of that.
But you talk about, being pregnant and how things can get passed on.
Mm-hmm.
The baby growing inside of us, it's affected by its surroundings and in emotions, as well as other factors that can play into it. What else did you learn?
Well, one of the in talking about the causes of thoughts of it, fear a lot of times has some behind it, the different reasons for the fear. And one of them they talk about is the fact, like sometimes people fear things because if they can't be successful at solving it, then they don't want to do it. So they avoid, or they feel like they're going to fail at solving it, so they avoid it. But they talk about in this article on the minimalism made simple website about 12 ways to overcome it. And I thought they were kind of interesting, some of the ways they talked about. The first one was trust yourself. And that to me kind of came across as, well, just trust yourself, just stop it, kind of thing. And because they talk about you have to, in building self-confidence, then allows you to feel better about the unknown. But it sounded too, well, I guess that was the purpose of it, simple, but a little too simple. Like just trust yourself, get over it. Kind of.
Well, I think it's about tuning in. I'm thinking about, as you talk about this fear of the unknown, I'm thinking about procrastination and how that, I never thought about that as sort of a fear of not knowing what's going to happen, not knowing the results. So I'm just going to avoid doing it. And having the confidence to move forward anyhow, even though you don't know what's going to turn out. So yeah, trusting yourself, that makes a lot of sense to me.
It just, I guess is that it takes time to do that. That it's not something that's,
well, what are the steps to getting to trust yourself?
So to learn about the fear, in it they talked about going online and investigating it, and I think there's a fine line there too of going down a rabbit hole, Dr. Google or whatever, where you just go too far down.
When we were moving and looking at different areas and different counties to move to, and our child researched crime rates in an area, there's a point of being informed and aware and knowing, but there's a point where you
going too far, going down the rabbit hole or whatever. Like,
it's like if you feel like you have symptoms and you start looking it up online and you're like, oh my God, I've got a brain tumor, and you get convinced.
Well, I think all of these areas that talk about the 12 different ways of overcoming it have two sides to it, because the next one is talk to someone who's been in that situation or gone through something like that. And that can be good and bad.
Well, I think the key there is have gone through it. So not someone stuck in the middle of the fear, but someone who's, this is reminding me of ERP therapy. So that is the standard for obsessive compulsive disorder. And what obsessive compulsive disorder really is, it's either a irrational fear or a rational fear taken to an extreme or irrational level. And ERP is exposure response prevention. So exposing yourself to something that with OCD, you're so afraid that touching something that could be contaminated with germs is going to kill you.
Yeah.
And realizing, and your brain goes into overload of the intensity. I read this description one time. It's like what might bother an average person a little bit, someone with OCD, it's like they're standing on a cliff with someone with a gun pointed behind them. They go into full on fight or flight arousal, and just they're at that heightened state of anxiety. I was talking about this not that long ago with our youngest, of that in that anxious anxiety state is kind of where they live a lot of the time. And then things that trigger it just send it into overdrive. And so you don't just do something super scary and all at once. You slowly expose yourself. Okay, I have a fear of batteries. And so I'm going to look at a battery for 5 minutes. And it's a gradual process building up to it. And so exposing yourself to it, to retraining your brain that nothing terrible is going to happen when I'm around that. So as you're talking about this, there's very much an overlap there.
Well, actually, it's a little more, because it's actually realizing both sides of that, though. It's not just that nothing's going to happen, but it could happen, but it couldn't. Because in the acceptance the ACT
Acceptance,
therapy.
commitment
They
therapy.
talk about you have to also look at that could happen, but you have to be able to handle both sides of that.
It's very common with OCD to want to know for certain.
Yeah.
And
But being able to handle both of
and
that.
wanting a certainty, and life doesn't have 100% certainties, and accepting that I can't quite put the
could
words.
happen, couldn't happen. Both sides of that.
And yet there's some situations that when it's really extreme, you have to, it's again, kind of a fine line in a way of how far to go with that. And even with other anxieties that are not obsessive compulsive disorder, I have a fear of heights, and I went and stayed on the 20th floor. Actually, before I got to that point, we stayed at a resort. We have a timeshare, and it's a point, so we can go to different places. And we stayed, I don't know what floor we were on, maybe the 10th floor. And there's a balcony, and I made myself go up there and walk across the balcony. So I was exposing myself to what I was afraid of and learning nothing terrible happened. And by doing that, it really reduced that heightened fear. And then when I stayed on the 20th floor, I was able to go out in the balcony, and it's a very small balcony, so I was a little anxious, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I was able to enjoy it. Grandfather Mountain, if you've ever been there in North Carolina, they have a swinging bridge that goes,
and you look down
from one edge of the mountain to another.
How many feet?
And so it's an open bridge where there's slats where you can see through. The bridge is moving. There's like a railing, I guess, along the sides.
So wire.
And I went across it more than once. It still brings up a lot of fear in me. I mean, I have
just thinking about it can do it.
Right? Not completely, because it's like, well, everybody walks across that bridge and nothing terrible happens, and it's a beautiful view. But when I am there, I have a phobic response. My heart races, I get anxious, I get sweaty, I get panicky. And yet I did it. I learned that putting the music on, and I had my music on, and I had to stay straightforward. I could not look over the side. And one time and I was usually holding on the hand of one of my children.
Tightly, very tightly.
And someone's like stopped in the middle having a conversation, and I'm like,
don't stop.
And I'm not going to walk around you on the edge. Like, we need to keep walking. But by doing these things, I can now go to situations where I would have, freaked out about. And it's not that my fear of heights is gone yet.
But you're managing it.
I think that's... And I can go up and stand on a balcony and feel calmer. Like I can tell a difference. Mm-hmm. At our old house, our porch was up 5 feet in the air. And I used to stand there and lean over, and I'd kind of get quivery when I did that. And then after these other trips and being up even higher, it really was calmer. So I really saw a difference in my physiological response that I was having to the fear.
Well, I'm started to realize in practice, I talk about the ERP, the exposure response prevention method, with people just with anxiety, period. I think it's like you just said, it isn't just about OCD, but it can work any anxiety of a fear of something. It's slowly getting yourself used to it. It's not the Fear Factor show. I've not really watched episodes of that, but being thrown into a bucket full of tarantulas when you have a fear of spiders, right? No, it's not that methodical. It's not an extreme, slow, methodical way of being exposed.
And it's not something you want to just, you're afraid of this, I'm going to help you by, exposing you to it.
Yeah. So number 4 in this says, take care of yourself, which they kind of talked about being more healthy, taking walks, getting outside, eating right, all of those things.
Because all those things have an impact on you. When you're doing unknown things. We moved, as you all know, if you've listened to any of our podcasts. And so we're in a new situation. We're having to unpack. Things are in a different order. Things are in different places. And if I am not taking care of my body and eating the way I typically do, then I'm more at risk for getting sick. And that's adding to my stress and anxiety of having to unpack. And so these little things, they really do add up.
Yep.
That makes sense?
Number 5 is talk back or question those fears. And the questions that, what evidence am I basing this on is one of the questions you can ask yourself. Or how does this fear affect me? And does this fear serve any purpose? Some of the questions that you can.
So I'm hearing 2 things as you say that. OCD. Another thing is part of therapy. There's a book called Talking Back to OCD, and we'll have to reference it and share the link.
Fully, or however you want
to. And I'm also thinking about the positive intelligence program that I did with Helen and my amazing group of women, and looking at our saboteurs. So we have a judge within us that's judging us and criticizing us. And there's a whole saboteur assessment. You can look at the positive intelligence website. But part of it is like, okay, this is my pleaser, my people pleaser, or that, and talking to that and saying, okay, I see a Petunia people pleaser. You have served me in the past in some way, but do I really need to be pleasing other people? I'll share an example that my friend shared. She was cleaning up her house to have people come over, feeling very anxious about it. And she said, she realized to herself, okay, am I having people over to walk around and admire my house? She's like, no, I'm having people over to enjoy the fellowship. And so her fear was about what people would think of her surroundings. And so it's that recognizing that you're having those fear responses, those saboteurs that come up, and talking back to them, and not just saying, okay, go away, fear, but saying, okay, this is what's happening. I'm in this place of, wherever you're at with anxiety.
Well, it's addressing it, because if you're pushing it down, I was talking to a lady this morning about, you're pushing down that fear, it's like putting a balloon underwater. Mm-hmm. It's just going to keep coming back up, versus accepting it and addressing it so that you can start to change it. And that's what we're doing with the exposure therapy, is you're facing it in a methodical, slow, not an overwhelming way, so that you can turn it around and start managing it. I think that's, well, anxiety is that way. Any anxiety isn't going to go away. Anxiety is natural. Yeah.
Well, and it's a part of anxiety. I mean, there's a helpful component of anxiety that the reaction I get,
cautionary part.
The reaction I get when I'm standing somewhere up really high, especially if there's opening or the floor is not completely solid below me, that heart racing, so that is our reptilian brain. That's the part of our brain that's the fight or flight. And if you are in a dangerous situation, you need those physiological responses to be able to run or fight or flee if there is a true emergency.
Well, and it kind of makes you cautionary too, that you start sensing what's around you and making sure to keep yourself safe,
So we don't want to get rid of all anxiety. We don't want to be so chill and laid back and we never worry about anything. And we're standing in the road and like, oh, the cars are coming. Oh, well.
Yeah. Well, I think it's Dr. Kilbane used to say, anxiety, everybody has kind of like this cup of anxiety inside of them. Everybody's cup is different sizes.
Mine's a teacup.
And as long as the anxiety is within that cup, it's manageable. It's just when it starts to bubble over and overflow the cup that's when you start noticing it as being a problem.
Good analogy.
Something like that. So,
like when I have so much creamer in here, it's spilling out over the top of the cup.
You have to slurp it up, stick your face on. All right, number 6 is don't let the fear control you. And again, that one comes across a little bit like just don't do that. And again, it's a process of that control. I don't even like the word control. I always tell my clients, change that word to manage. Control sounds, when I hear it, it's kind of like has constrictive kind of.
Well, you don't want the fear to control you. You don't want to never
true.
Go anywhere because you're afraid of heights, or to never do anything because of that fear. It's what we were talking about leading up to this is if you let your fear control you, it stops you from doing all the things you need to
Yeah,
do.
that's true. It's control. That's different. Yeah. All right.
What's next, Donald?
Number 7. It's learn to accept failure.
Mm.
Um, if you feel like you can't control it or you don't know what's coming, you might feel like you failed because you haven't understood it or solved it or, you know, so it's accepting that idea that that you're not failing at it. Or
Well, failure is looking at it in a new way, that mistakes are a part of growing and understanding,
well, yeah,
and we learn from them. And being okay with that and knowing not everything is going to work out the way we intended.
yeah,
If you bake a cake and it flops and it doesn't come out, accepting that and being like, okay, maybe I forgot something in the recipe. Maybe I didn't have the oven on the right temperature. We learn from that failure. And so that can apply to all aspects of life.
yeah. Well, it's the that light bulb thing, or is it Edison? You know, it supposedly went through like 1,000 light bulbs before he got to the one that worked. But he never looked at any one of them as failure. They were just leading him to the next
Well,
one.
yeah, any inventor, yeah.
Solving.
Right, to invent
finding
something, you don't
yeah.
necessarily do it on the first try. It's a
Well, I think it's with anything though. You don't like our kids when we taught them to ride bicycles. We didn't put them on it. They just took off and start riding. They fell. They got distracted. They got disheartened by the fact that they fell, or and that they just had to keep going. But they learned each time, oh, if I do this, I'll fall. So they didn't do that.
That's an interesting example because we have 2 kids who don't know how to ride a bike.
They didn't. They didn't go. Yeah, they didn't. Well, yeah.
And our youngest, though, we started her on what was that bike called? It doesn't have pedals. She was like a toddler still, and you use your feet, so you learn the balancing skill because that's before you learn to do the pedaling. And so we introduced it to her, and we all have different strengths and weaknesses, and balancing and coordination are not the strength of one of our children.
Number 8 is embrace change, and this kind of goes to the core of what I talked about initially, is that I think an unknown is very important because it kicks us into the idea of change, and keeps us fresh, keeps us moving forward by always wanting to reach for that unknown and ask questions and slowly gain knowledge of some of the unknown as we go along. It's like getting little bits of treat going along. So, does that make sense? In other words, the unknown, when we gain some knowledge about a little bit of something that's unknown, it's kind of like, oh, cool, I learned something new.
Okay. Well, you're talking about embracing change.
Which is change. That's change. That's.
Mm-hmm. I guess I feel like we could do a whole podcast on embracing change.
Well, yeah.
Because
there's so much to it.
Yeah, and there's comfort from moving and relocating to a whole nother county and a house that's completely different, and having a different drive to work and a different commute and all these different factors at once. Yes, there's some refreshingness of the change, but a whole lot of change at once.
Yeah, well, that's overwhelming.
Can feel, and yet, it's that fear of the unknown that keeps us from changing. And then we stay stuck in a rut and we don't want to change. And some people, as they get older, they get more comfortable in the routines, and understandably so. I'm learning the benefit of routines, just getting up in the morning and knowing where my clothes are and having a routine with getting ready in the morning.
Here's my hairbrush.
When you can't do and you don't know where things are, you spend more time walking around in circles. So there is an importance, of comfort of routine and understanding that. And I think it can get a bad rap that, they're set in their ways. Yeah. They don't want to do anything different. Well, they're functioning. You function when you know what's going to happen. And so embracing change in little aspects can be important. And it is that stepping out of your comfort zone to realize, okay, there's going to be some change here. It's like, I knew when we looked at moving, I'd have a longer commute to work. And I told myself I was okay with that. And now that I'm doing it, I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah, this is, and how can I embrace this? Okay. I've got 40 to 50 minutes to myself in the car. I can listen to podcasts. I can, use that time in other ways and accepting it. Because
Well,
part
that
of,
leads into the next one. It says find ways to manage your anxiety.
and see, I knew that was coming. And
So, EFT is one, like you were just talking about some, meditations, things like that. Taking care of yourself. Really, all of these 12 ways are in that statement.
Yeah, it's interesting because you said this is all about the fear of the unknown, and yet these are like, I mean, life is an unknown, so it's just like tools for life.
Yeah, yeah. And so being able to see that when you think about the unknown, how important it is, how good it is that it is what life is. It's a lot of times I think we have a hard time. We don't really look at life as a process that it is,
It's a journey,
Yeah, and we
not
want
the
to get we want to
destination.
get to the destination. Our mind, I think we're set up for that as at a very young age, that it's about getting it done, getting it to the destination, when really, because as soon as we get to that destination, the next one pops up. And the next, because if it doesn't, then we're probably not here. If we get to a destination, then it's the end,
Yes, you're getting very
very deep. Sorry.
philosophical. Well, and it's, I say this to you all the time because some people are better at the process versus the end product. And so, yes, I see that I want to get to a destination. At the same time, I enjoy the process and the journey of it. And for you, that can be more challenging.
Yeah,
you want things completed,
yeah.
and yet, like, even although like right now we have so much to move in with the house and unpack and figure out where to put things, and that I need to realize, okay, it's a process.
But I think it's
because I have dreams of going to work and coming home and everything's put away. And I guess this is a good reminder to me right now that, okay, this is a process. And
maybe it's how you balance that too, enjoying the process and looking forward to a certain end to something, or a certain completion of something can be satisfying.
And just, like with our example of the house, realizing, okay, at first I wanted to be here when you put things away. I was very nervous about being at work and you putting things away, and I not
place.
And I not having a say in it. And then I realized, okay, you put stuff away, and then if I want to move it, I can move it, and that helps to move forward. And being able to laugh about it, being able to joke about, I still have not found my hairbrush, and my daughter was like, "Why don't you just buy a new one?" And it's funny that it didn't even occur to me initially. And at the same time, I don't want to buy something like you talked about going out and buying the soap dispensers. It's like, we have them. We don't know where they are. I don't want to spend money
we needed soap
on something that we already have.
Well, and that leads us to the next one, which is be open to new experiences. Open to that new hairbrush, or open to the experience of living in this house, which is a whole new experience for us. It's shaped differently. It's set up differently, kitchens. So it's a new experience in every turn here.
It has 9-foot ceilings instead of 8, and so
it echoes.
Yeah, there's a lot of echo.
I hear you. I hear you. And that leads us to the next one, which is imagination is the key. Having a good imagine. Well, and it leads into kind of what I go back to Abraham Hicks again, but we really want to focus towards what we desire versus putting our focus on what is then we end up creating more of what is versus
imagine the possibilities.
Yeah.
Even in a difficult situation, which can be more challenging, to imagine different possibilities.
But I think we create from our minds and our imagination.
And we create our fears, and we create our own blocks and barriers that prevent us from moving forward. And we can also create the opportunity to laugh at what's happened or have a new experience.
Be open to.
And being open to it rather than fighting and resisting it. Lexi and I got out of the house so that we could have our counters sealed with this sealant, because people we bought it from put this weird wood block in counters, and we wanted it sealed. So we thought they were coming at 1, and so we went out of the house, and they didn't get here till much later in the afternoon. So we stayed out longer than we were planning to. But in that process, we were with my almost daughter-in-law, as I call her, my son's fiance, and we hung out together. And then we went to her grandmother's place, and we had a nice time with her and enjoyed talking with her. Even though I wanted to be home and putting things away, we didn't want to come home while they were still applying the stuff. And so I had to embrace that. And I still frustrated that it's like I lost hours that I wanted to work on things. And yet I had the experience of connecting with someone and spending that time together and kind of having that gift of, in the middle of having a million things to do, well, right now I'm away from the house and this is what I can do.
Well, it's the same thing with working with your dad. It's tough, but at the same time, it's helping him and being part of his experience has been a blessing for you, but it also takes you away from here.
His experience is a blessing.
Well, just helping him and doing things for him is a blessing for you. It's heartwarming and
My dad's 81. He's got Parkinson's and advanced dementia, and he gets in a panic and has these, like my mom said, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He's a very calm, compassionate, loving man, and yet with dementia, he can get where he's having delusions and hallucinations that think something terrible is going to happen to him, and he can get him angry and agitated and these things. And most of the time I'm able to help calm him. And so he kind of calls me and begs me to come there. And sometimes he's like, if you don't come here, I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. He said to me the other day, I'm going to jump off a bridge. And it can feel heavy. And like we talk about the sandwich generation is, okay, I'm trying to juggle working, helping our 14-year-old, getting moved into my house, growing our business, driving to, my parents, and yet taking the time to spend with my dad. Mm. I mean, we don't know how long any of us are here on this earth, but especially with my dad with advanced dementia, more prone to getting pneumonia and different things.
A lot of physical issues going on.
And spending time with him, I know he appreciates it, and I appreciate having time with him and connecting with my mom, who's his caregiver, and we're worried about her and the impact it has on caregivers. And like, I'm going to go down and visit them tomorrow. And it's like, well, what if you and I meet up for lunch? We can just have some hangout time first, because my dad can get so paranoid that we can't really talk about him with him around because his hearing is too good. And but we need to discuss his care and things. And my mom needs to get out and just she goes to exercise and she does other things, but to also just spend some time with her daughter when it's, not necessarily revolved around her husband who she's caring for. So taking the times to do that. So like you said about having opportunities, what were the last few things? Did we get through all of them?
No, the last one is using your personal power, your abilities to manage it. That some of these take time to realize in yourself.
Well, and recognizing what your strengths are. I guess that's what it means by your personal power.
Yeah, that and the idea that we all have the creative abilities to the imagination where we can create how we want the future to go versus having to kind of guess at it, or be fearful of the unknown. We can actually create it.
Right. And also using your personal power is knowing what your strengths are. Yeah. Like you are good at completing and emptying boxes and putting things away. And I get overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh. I mean, my daughter and I had kind of a fight. Like we both had different ideas of where we wanted to put things away. And so we got nothing done versus you put things away and I come home and go, oh, I don't want that there. I want to move it here, here, here. So your strength was emptying the boxes and just making a plan. And then I can organize it once it's out. So, using we have different strengths of doing things like with this business. There's aspects of it that are your strengths and aspects that are my strengths. And so with life in general, and when we're dealing with a fear and unknown, difficult situations, understanding what your own strengths are and your weaknesses are, and realizing, okay, even though this is my weakness, I might need to stretch with that a little bit. What can I do to address that? As well as it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to be like, these boxes overwhelm me, Don. When I go to work, will you just unpack a bunch of them and then I can rearrange things?
We've got a big pile of stuff in the middle of the room.
When I get home.
It's like our garage. So how can we summarize this? You think?
Don't worry, be happy.
Just get over it and stop it. Like Bob Newhart.
Yes, we'll share that in another podcast. Well, the fear of the unknown, life is unknown. And if we want to know what's going to happen every step of the way, we're going to live in a tight little box and not ever venture outside of where we live. And having to balance comfort and routine as well as opportunities to stretch and grow. Because if we don't ever do that, when something big comes along, and then we crumble and fall apart. I know one of my powers, which I didn't know until I needed to use it, was rising to the occasion in a crisis. When you had your heart attack back in 2011. And somehow I was able to jump to and figure things out and make things happen. And I've learned over the years that I'm good at that. Mm-hmm. And I've also learned that I'm almost looking for that in my life and not wanting to be seeking crises all the time.
Yeah.
I've lost my train of thought on.
That's okay. So
understanding our powers and knowing, the uncertainty of life, not knowing what's going to happen, not knowing when you had your heart attack, you were in ventricular tachycardia. Your heart was not in right rhythm. You had a faint, weak pulse. I knew all this because the medics, even though they told me and the kids to go in a different room, I understood the language of everything they were saying. And they were trying to resuscitate you and you weren't getting back in rhythm. And your face was dark blue. You were not getting oxygen to your brain, which means brain damage, which, so when they took you to the hospital, I did not know if you were going to be alive when I got there. Yeah. I had the conscious reality, because of my understanding of medical knowledge, how, what was going on, physiology, what was going on in your body. And so I did not know. And the medics were great. There were 2 fire stations that responded, and the one stayed back with me. And he's like, do you have someone you can call, to be here with you? And it took me a minute to call some friends. And it was so good that a friend, my dear friend Leah, came to the house, drove me and the kids to the hospital so that I didn't have to do that driving. And so in that moment, having that support, having those people around, because I did not know. And in life, we don't know. And I'm trying to summarize, and I think lost in my words, but
is to start when it comes to the unknown, recognizing it and accepting it, that it's part of life that you can't know anyway. So enjoy the idea that I can imagine my way into the unknown. I can imagine my way into life.
And what things do you need to do to take care of yourself?
Yeah.
And getting into routines of taking care of yourself and having those things in place, so when the unexpected comes up, you're better able to deal with it.
Yeah.
There's, it's a lot of self-care stuff. Everything, as you read this list, I'm like, this is really very much in line with self-care. We did a whole series on self-care at the beginning when we started this podcast. So many more things we can talk about with these topics, and so many other areas we can delve into. And we'd like to hear from you. We'd like to know what you'd like to hear more of as we expand our podcast, talking about the sandwich generation, juggling, raising kids, and caring for elderly parents, or workshops we want to continue doing with parents of kids based on the book, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, and Listen So Kids Will Talk, and our other programs that we are developing to help adults and caregivers even of aging loved ones, of how to juggle things and having the support and being able to get the resources
you need, and understanding this unknown, the unknown of aging.
So that's our podcast for today. I really hope you've enjoyed it. And like I said, we'd love the comments. So
yeah, reach out, connect to us. We want to hear from you. We want to know. We're going to be doing some more interviews. What are you interested in hearing? Please give reviews and feedback.
check out our website,
Focused
focusedhealthyfamily.com.
Check out our blogs there.
Our podcast, of course, is there.
Our Tuesday
Tips
podcast. It's all there. And follow me on Instagram, Gina.FocusedHealthyFamily. And remember, how you speak to your children today shapes their future and yours.